SLT Speed Up සවාරිය සමගින් සද්දන්ත වාසි රැල්ලක්. අලුත් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සබඳතා සඳහා පළමු මාස දෙක පුරා data double. Speed up with SLT.
Making headlines on First at 9. Radio drama. Minister of Finance and Mass Media wants censorship on forms of art reconsidered. Common goal. The United National Party and the joint opposition intend to defeat the Delimitation Report in Parliament. More uncertainty. Election Commission is unsure as to when the election will be held.
There was a change of government, we thought things would be better. But we don't know when the next elections will be.
Where is the evidence? Former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran requests the CID to make available evidence and copies of warrants issued against him. Clinging to power. Australian Prime Minister stares down calls for his resignation. A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to First at 9 on Derana 24/7 Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. Now moving on to our top story tonight, the draft bill on the Amaradeva Centre for Aesthetics and Research being built in gratitude to late musical maestro Pandit W.D. Amaradeva passed in Parliament today with amendments. The presence of President Maithripala Sirisena for the debate was a point of significance.
The Amaradeva Centre for Aesthetics and Research is being constructed at a cost of 250 million rupees. The President pledged to build the facility during the late maestro's funeral, and the facility was also a request by the late Pandit Amaradeva. During the second reading of the draft bill on the Amaradeva Centre for Aesthetics and Research in Parliament today, President Maithripala Sirisena expressed these views.
Amaradeva Saundarya ha Pariyeshana Kendraya.
The government decided to establish the Amaradeva Centre for Aesthetics and Research with the aim of preserving the vision and the great service rendered by the late maestro. Our entire nation cannot separate itself from musical maestro Pandit W.D. Amaradeva.
Meanwhile, employees of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited, who rendered their service for 25 years, were presented with golden awards this evening. The event was held under the auspices of President Maithripala Sirisena and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe at the BMICH.
The subject minister is performing his duty well, using his leadership experience in sports. The team should be kept together. Back then he only had 10 people. To lead. But today we have greater numbers. He is now working to provide adequate stocks of fuel together with these employees.
In the meantime, railway trade unions held a discussion with the President at the Presidential Secretariat today regarding the issues pertaining to their salaries. Following the discussion, its members stated that even though the discussions failed to live up to their expectations, they still have faith in the President.
The topic of censorship on artistic productions was discussed in Parliament today with Minister of Finance and Mass Media Mangda Samaraweera calling on the Minister of Cultural Affairs to reconsider censoring dramas and other forms of art. Minister Samaraweera made this request while touching on the issue surrounding the new radio drama series, The Office for National Unity and Reconciliation.
Although we might not agree with what is said through art, we have to accept that artists have a right to express themselves. This is why I am requesting the Minister of Cultural Affairs to reconsider censoring dramas and other mediums of art. Recently, a Buddhist monk who is engaged in politics heavily criticized a drama, saying that it insults Buddhism. I looked into the matter and I found out that this drama was actually talking about something which, as Buddhists, we must think about. For example, this drama talks about how Buddhists are going behind the star culture instead of the Buddhist culture. You weren't listening to what I was talking about. This is the problem with the JVP, as you always tread on your own tail after only listening to half of the story. I had preparations in place to produce a film on the murder of Richard Soiza, but once your government came to power, you banned the production. Can you take a look into the matter? I haven't banned anything. You should start it over and we will let you do it. We should also make a film about the murder of Lasantha Wickrematunge. We talked about one of the bankrupt companies, the ETI. What's the central bank's recommendation on the company? We should have found a solution to this matter by discussing with relevant parties because there were many suicides, mental health issues and family problems because of it. How can we question the ETI since depositors made investments with confidence following assurances by the central bank? The central bank should then be responsible if something happens with their investments. The central bank points fingers at everybody except at themselves. Swarnavahini had sold shares to foreign investors, but why couldn't they pay back depositors? Central banks still couldn't give an answer to that, and that is exactly what we're asking.
The delimitation report pertaining to the provincial council elections is set to be tabled in Parliament tomorrow. Several political parties, including the United National Party as well as the joint opposition, however, have decided to defeat the delimitation report.
Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government Faiza Mustafa is to table the delimitation report in Parliament tomorrow pertaining to the provincial council elections. In the meantime, a special party leaders meeting was held at the parliamentary complex this afternoon to discuss the delimitation report.
පක්ෂනායකරැස්වීමේ කිසි තීරණයක් නැහැ. හෙට උදේ විවාදේ තියෙනවා. තත්ත්වයක් ගත්තද? කිසිම උණුසුමක් නැහැ. සියලුම පක්ෂනායකයෝ කලින්
The party leaders had decided to debate the delimitation report in Parliament tomorrow and go for a vote. Since the members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party don't like to go for a vote, we decided to call another meeting at 3 tomorrow to arrive at a decision. However, at the moment, the decision is to go for a vote. The majority of Parliament is not keen to change the decision. If the government has an issue, they should discuss and resolve it. But we suspect that they're trying to postpone elections by inciting issues. The meeting was postponed and they said the President and the Prime Minister will have a discussion tonight.
අද රාත්‍රී සාකච්ඡාවක් තියෙන බව තමයි අවසානයේදී දැනුම් දීලා කල් තිබ්බේ.
In the meantime, several political representatives expressed views about the provincial council elections at different media briefings today.
The stance of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party is that the elections should be held under a mixed system. Let's see what happens in the debate tomorrow. During the party leaders' meeting, we discussed holding the election under the old electoral system and to vote against the delimitation report. The SLFP says that they accept there are defects in the old electoral system and they want the new one. This is a joke since the electoral system they claim to be good has become otherwise within 5 months. The government doesn't have a prudent policy. We as the joint opposition decided today to defeat the delimitation report in Parliament. There are a number of reasons for us to vote against it. One of the reasons is that there are injustices at certain junctures.
The 4th Asian Electoral Stakeholders Forum is set to be held in Sri Lanka with the 2-day event set to get underway on the 27th. The forum will be organised by the Election Commission of Sri Lanka and the Asian Network for Free Elections under the theme Advancing Election Transparency and Integrity, Promoting and Defending Democracy Together. Addressing a media briefing held on the event today, member of the Election Commission, Professor Ratnajeevan Hool, said, although the change of government brought about high hopes, the date of the next election remains a mystery.
The purpose of the forum is to strengthen democracy and affirm everyone's franchise. We all aspire to be democratic, although we may not be entirely democratic. So it's a journey. No one has a perfect democracy. Even Greece may claim to be the mother of democracy. England may claim to be the mother of parliaments, but they too have things to improve. Wherever there is a loss of democracy, we all lose, because when one country can send the military to get involved in polls, it's an excuse for other countries to do the same thing. So we must share our practices, we must share our experiences. 2013, we almost came to be suspended from the Commonwealth because our institutions were very weak. There was a change of government, we thought things would be better. But we don't know when the next elections will be.
Election laws in Sri Lanka have developed owing to the decisions passed through Parliament and heard by the Supreme Court or Court of Appeal. Civil organisations and election monitoring organisations are behind these court decisions. When an election was postponed in 1998, CMV, an organisation to monitor election violations, went to court against this postponement. The Supreme Court gave its verdict saying that an election cannot be postponed except for security reasons under emergency law.
ආරක්ෂිත හේතු නැත්තම් ඡන්ද විමසීම කල් දාන්න බෑ කියලා.
Former Governor of the Central Bank, Arjuna Mahendran, has requested the Criminal Investigation Department to make available evidence and copies of warrants issued against him. When the case of the controversial Central Bank bond issuance was taken up in court today, the Attorney General informed court that the former Central Bank Governor has made the request to the Criminal Investigations Department through the Interpol.
The case of the controversial bond issuance was taken up before Fort Magistrate Lankan today, with Deputy Solicitor General Haripriya Jayasundara representing the Attorney General informed court that the former Governor of the Central Bank, Arjuna Mahendran, has made a request through Interpol to the Criminal Investigation Department. The Deputy Solicitor General informed court that the former Central Bank Governor has requested the CID to hand over copies of warrants issued against him, charges filed by the CID and also the evidence they have accumulated against him. Fort Magistrate Lankan questioned the Attorney General's department whether they have ascertained the whereabouts of the former Central Bank Governor. In response, the Deputy Solicitor General said that Mahendran remains to be in Singapore in secrecy. She also informed court that the legal provisions to provide Mahendran with the documents he requested are being deliberated and the Attorney General's decision on the matter will be informed to court during the next hearing. In the meantime, the owner of Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Arjuna and Chief Executive Officer Kasun Palisena, involved in the controversial bond scam, were further remanded until the 30th of this month.
The group of 16 SLFP members who recently left the unity government calls on President Maithripala Sirisena to ensure the return of former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran, as now the President has taken over the powers of the extradition law under his purview. Addressing a media briefing held in Colombo today, member of the breakaway group, parliamentarian NSP Disanayaka, also touched on the topic of ragging and treatment of university students during protests.
The President gazetted the extradition law under the Ministry of Defence yesterday. We are asking the President to bring back former Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran from Singapore with the support of Singapore Ambassador and Prime Minister. Representing Sri Lanka, Mahendran had done most of the work to see that Singapore-Sri Lanka FTA was signed. We're staying with the joint opposition as a faction of the SLFP. That is exactly the request made by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa as well. This ragging must be stopped. And for that to happen, we must hand over the control of universities to its administration itself. The Frontline Socialist Party is the one controlling the Peradeniya University. It's the members of the Frontline Socialist Party who are in the lodge of the Vice-Chancellor and in the Senate. A university cannot function like that. Students must be called inside the Ministry of Education and the officials must very sternly tell them that they will not get any of their demands. But they should be kicked out of the ministry after having discussions. If they still continue to protest even after those discussions, the use of tear gas and batons are justified.
Propaganda Secretary to the JVP parliamentarian Vijitha Herath is calling for the government's resignation, citing that the present regime has failed to deliver the promise it made to the public even after 3 years in power. MP Herath made this remark while addressing a media briefing in Colombo this morning.
Common candidate Maithripala Sirisena pledged to abolish the executive presidency within 100 days. This government has failed to keep that promise even after 3 years in power. They also promised a five-fold policy framework to develop the country. They promised to not burden the public with a huge cabinet. The government arrests the likes of Kasun Palisena while the mastermind is still at large. The cabinet has also changed 4 times during the last 3 years. They're not strong enough to run the government with a clear vision. The cost of living index in February in 2015 was 108.9. In July this year, it has increased to 126.5. Before coming to power, they criticised the loans taken out by the Rajapaksa government. This government does the same and says that they facilitated people to breathe freely. Protest marches by students are cracked down with the use of the police and the army. Trees at the Knuckles range are cut down and the unemployment is not addressed. How can the people breathe freely? They relate fairy tales. The government should resign soon as they fail to keep its promises given to the people.
Parliamentarian Mahendran today accused government of shielding its members found culpable of various fraud and offences, highlighting the controversies surrounding the comments made by MP Vijayakala Maheshwaran, where she encouraged the resurgence of the LTTE. MP Alud Gamage said the government has failed to act on the determination the Attorney General made on the comments.
The statement made by MP Vijayakala Maheshwaran came to the attention of the country as it was a serious statement. Various people filed complaints with the police and the CID. Finally, after directing this case to the Attorney General and following the inquiry by the CID, the Attorney General forwarded his decision to the Speaker. According to sources, the Attorney General has clearly stated that the statement is illegal. Vijayakala Maheshwaran should now be arrested and produced before court. But this government does not arrest anyone within the government. Allegations on a number of ministers have been proven, including the bond scam, but none of them are arrested. At a time when the Attorney General has directed the Speaker to take such a decision, failing to follow the directives will encourage Vijayakala to make similar statements. So, she should be immediately arrested and produced before court.
Chairman of the Office of Missing Persons, President Council Salia Pieris reveals the OMP's plan to present necessary recommendations to the President and the Prime Minister. The Chairman of the OMP touched on their intention at a media briefing held in Colombo today regarding the upcoming commemorative event organised in line with International Day of the Disappeared. The event will be held at the J.R. Jayawardena Centre from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the 30th of this month under the theme No More Disappearances.
Sri Lanka has one of the highest rates of disappearances in Asia as well as the world. Over 4 decades, there have been thousands of disappearances affecting different regions, the north, the east, the south of Sri Lanka during different conflicts. And it is the view of this office that the issue of disappearances must be brought to the notice and the people of this country must acknowledge the suffering that has occurred as a result of these disappearances. And we must acknowledge that as a country, we owe it to the families of the disappeared that we help them to find a closure. 2018 is important from the point of view of the missing and the disappeared for 2 reasons. There is on one hand, the International Convention against Enforced Disappearances was ratified by Sri Lanka, and in March, the law was passed by Parliament. Secondly, in February, His Excellency the President, on the recommendation of the Constitutional Council, also appointed the Office on Missing Persons. We are hoping to hand over the report, the recommendations to His Excellency the President and the Honourable Prime Minister. We will be focusing on welfare of the families of the victims, on issues of finding the truth. We will be making recommendations on how we think that justice should be done to the families of the victims.
How many have disappeared? And what are the kind of the time frame for those disappearances?
The ICRC statistics as at 2016 is 16,000. The Paranagama Commission, it's over 21,000. Ministry of National Reconciliation called for documents it came through the Grama Niladaris and the divisional secretariats, number over 13,000. One of our tasks would be to come up with these statistics.
Is it possible for you to give an idea of how many we are talking about in the northeast alone? I mean, just excluding the south.
We would not want to guesstimate one figure. The existing statistics are the Paranagama Commission over 21,000, ICRC 16,000. So one might not be able to add that. It would not be 21 plus 16 because there would be overlapping. But so I think it would be safe to say over 20,000. To that you have to add, of course, what the other lists which people who have not complained before, civil society figures.
Former chairman of the Sri Lanka Airlines or Sri Lankan Airlines, Nishantha Wickramasinghe, and former chief executive officer Kapila Chandrasena arrived at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the management of Sri Lankan Airlines, Sri Lankan Catering and Mihin Lanka today. They arrived following a notice issued by an arm of the Criminal Investigations Department attached to the commission.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry appointed to probe the management of Sri Lankan Airlines, Sri Lankan Catering and Mihin Lanka commenced recording evidence last May. The Commission recently issued notice to former chairman of the Sri Lankan Airlines, Nishantha Wickramasinghe, and former Chief Executive Officer Kapila Chandrasena to appear before the Commission to give a statement. Accordingly, they arrived at the CID office attached to the Commission this morning, and it is reported that statements were recorded regarding comments made by witnesses who have already appeared before the Commission and regarding alleged irregularities at the Sri Lankan Airlines. In the meantime, the Commission has issued notice to Sajin Vas Gunawardena, seeking his appearance before the Commission tomorrow. He was a member of the first board of directors of Mihin Lanka. Meanwhile, former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who acted as a director of Mihin Lanka and sent the application to register the company under the Department of Company Registration, is also summoned before the Commission on the 29th to provide a statement to the CID.
The National Tree Planting Campaign Thuruliya Venuwen Api, jointly led by the Sri Lankan Army Road Development Authority along with Manusat Derana, the humanitarian initiative of the Derana Media Network, was launched this morning. The campaign will see saplings being planted either side of the Southern Expressway, stretching 154 kilometres.
Army Commander Lieutenant General Mahesh Sinanayaka inaugurated the campaign as the chief guest today at the Aturugiriya interchange of the Southern Expressway. Concurrent to the main ceremony, saplings were planted at Kottawa, Valipanna, Kahatuduwa, Dodangoda and Godagama interchanges. Over 116,000 saplings will be planted along the Southern Expressway under this project.
We will take this tree planting project as the Sri Lanka Army's second mission, and we will finish it in 6 stages. As the commander of the Sri Lanka Army, I especially extend my gratitude to TV Derana Chairman Dilip Javira, the Manusat Derana team and the RGA for joining this project. Our vision is media should not only provide entertainment programs, but it should also communicate messages beneficial to the society. Accordingly, we previously commenced a project to plant 1 million trees. While that project was underway, we received this invitation from the Sri Lanka Army and we happily joined them.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back to the news. Saudi Arabia has denied reports that it cancelled its plans to sell shares in state oil giant Aramco. Reuters earlier reported that a group of financial advisors had abandoned a plan to sell 5% of the firm. The news agency quoted a source suggesting the decision was taken some time ago but was not being announced. Saudi Arabia's energy minister said the government would proceed with the flotation, which has been billed as the largest ever. Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's crown prince, first proposed the share sale early in 2016 as part of his economic reform agenda to bring Western regulation and scrutiny to the company, as well as raising cash to reduce the country's large budget deficit. At the time, he predicted the sale would value Aramco at around $2 trillion. US President Donald Trump's trade war against China has moved up a gear as it brings in a 25% tax on a second wave of goods worth $16 billion. The move ratchets up the dispute, which began in July. The US imports far more goods from China than it exports to it. There are fears that more tariffs could cause further damage to companies and consumers. Goods affected this time included motorcycles and aerials. China, meanwhile, immediately imposed retaliatory taxes on the same value of US products. These will cover US goods including coal, medical instruments, cars and buses. China also says it plans to file a fresh complaint against the tariffs at the World Trade Organization, which adjudicates in global trade disputes. Sri Lankan shares closed high for the first time in 9 sessions today as foreign investors bought beaten down stocks, although worries over new tax proposals limited the upside. Foreign buying accounted for about 2/3 of the day's turnover of 1.7 billion rupees, which is better than this year's daily average of 826 million rupees. The all-share price index rose 0.25% to 6,055.76. edging up from its lowest close since March 30, 2017 hit in the previous session. The Sri Lanka rupee in the meantime closed at 160 rupees and 73 to 83 cents per dollar in thin trade compared with Tuesday's close of 160 rupees and 60 to 70 cents against the dollar. With that, let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies around the world. The British government is not imbuing its people with confidence as the country prepares to leave the European Union. The government is to begin advising people, businesses and other groups about how to plan for the possibility of leaving the EU without a deal. Many had feared this eventuality despite Chief Brexit negotiator Dominic Raab's insistence that the deal could be struck.
The UK government will begin advising people, businesses and other groups about how to plan for the possibility of leaving the EU without a deal. Ministers say publication of the first batch of documents will tackle what they call hair-raising scare stories about a no-deal Brexit. They say reaching a deal with the EU is the overriding priority, but we must be ready to consider the alternative. The EU has already produced 68 notices on Brexit preparedness. Labour said a no-deal outcome would be catastrophic and a complete failure by the government to negotiate for Britain. The party's Brexit spokesman, Sir Keir Starmer, told media that the government was now moving into panic mode and this latest advice would not pressure anyone. The British government's move to advise people on how to plan for the possibility of leaving the EU without a deal comes after Chief Brexit negotiator Dominic Raab expressed confidence on Tuesday that it can reach an agreement with the EU in October. In the midst of all this, Russia accuses Britain of trying to impose its own policies on Russia, the European Union and the United States. London has called on the EU to increase sanctions on Moscow, even though it is in the process of leaving the bloc.
Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has stared down his calls for his resignation amid an escalating leadership crisis that has crippled his government. Turnbull says he would not contest the leadership in his rivals in the Liberal Party secure enough support to bring on an internal vote. The government suspended Parliament today to try to resolve the crisis.
Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull stubbornly clung to power today as senior minister deserted him, saying he would hold a second leadership vote tomorrow if he received a letter signed by the majority of the ruling Liberal Party. Turnbull narrowly won a leadership vote on Tuesday against former Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton. Dutton and senior ministers today called for a second ballot.
Australians will be rightly appalled by what they're witnessing in their nation's parliament today and in the course of this week. So I now await a letter with the signatures of a majority of the party room. If I receive, which is 43, if I receive that, then I will convene a new party room meeting. The party room, of course, met on Tuesday and confirmed my leadership by a majority. So we need to see that there is a majority of members and they need to put their names to it too. These are momentous times and it's important that people are accountable for what they're doing. The reality is that a minority in the party room supported by others outside the parliament, have sought to bully, intimidate others into making this change of leadership that they're seeking. It's been described by many people, including those who feel they cannot resist it, as a form of madness.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
On to the Asian Games now. Sri Lankan swimmer Matthew Abesinghe came 6th in the 100-metre men's freestyle final today. Early in the day, he finished 3rd in the preliminary round but could not replicate that form in the final.
Sri Lanka swimmer Matthew Abesinghe clinched 3rd place in the preliminary round of the 100-metre freestyle men's event and secured a berth in the final. In the final, however, Matthew could only master a 6th place finish, clocking 49.28 seconds. In the meantime, President of the Sri Lanka Kabaddi Federation, Derana, has resigned from his position, owing to both men's and women's kabaddi teams failing to bring a medal to the country. In badminton, Sachin Dias and Bhuwanika Gunatilaka defeated their opponents from Macau 2-0 in the preliminary round of the men's doubles.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
A very good evening to our viewers and welcome to Forecast First. Starting off with your temperatures for tomorrow, they are to vary between 20 and 34 degrees Celsius, with the highest of 34 expected in Ampara and Batticaloa. Well, when looking at the map, a low pressure zone will develop in the central hills and will gradually spread throughout the eastern region of the island. Well, moving on to your rain forecast now, most parts of the upper region except for the Mannar district will experience showers with thunder activity also expected. Now moving on to your lower region of the island, except for Colombo and Galle, the other parts will experience showers as well. That's all from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your City by City forecast.
And that's it from Other Derana First at 9 for tonight. But before we go, we'd like to leave you with visuals of Sri Lanka's 18th tallest waterfall, Aberdeen Falls, located on Kehelgama Oya near Ginikathehena in the Nuwara district. We hope you enjoy these visuals and have a pleasant evening.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.